Hello listeners, and welcome to a bonus episode of the Cult Vault. Today, to mark the collaboration with Trapped in Treatment and the activism against the troubled teen industry, I have another interview with a survivor of this impossible industry. Today I talk with Madison about her experiences with French Camp Academy in Mississippi. But before that, Daphne, a previous guest who talked about Maple Lake Academy, sent a news article which I will read now. Jessica Miller writes for the Salt Lake Tribune. A teen treatment center in Utah County could be shut down after state regulators say a girl died because she was not given proper medical care. The girl died on January the 16th and had been at Maple Lake Academy, a small residential treatment program in Spanish Fork. Her death was attributed to a medical issue, according to state officials. For at least a week before her death, the girl had reported worsening symptoms to staff, according to a notice of agency action issued by Utah's Office of Licensing. After repeated requests from parents, the program took the client to be evaluated by a doctor. The notice reads, "After the doctor visit, the client complained of worsening symptoms but was not returned for medical care. The girl died early the next morning, according to the Office of Licensing." Utah County Sheriff Sergeant Spencer Cannon declined to discuss details of the case because the agency is still investigating, but he said deputies were called to the facility on January the 16th for a medical issue. Staff at the facility had started CPR after calling dispatchers, he said, but the girl died later after being taken to a local hospital. John Osgood, an attorney representing Maple Lake Academy, said the facility is cooperating with investigators, but disagreed with the state's assertion that the girl did not receive proper medical care. "He is devastated by the death of one of its students and devastated by this process," Osgood said. "Its students are devastated by the events that occurred." State regulators can issue a notice of agency action when it finds that a licensed facility has violated the state rules it is supposed to follow to keep kids safe. The action is considered punitive, but can be lifted if a facility comes back into compliance. For Maple Lake Academy, regulators are requiring the facility to stop taking new clients and ensure proper medical care is being given to the young people already in its care. Academy officials also are required to submit staffing sheets so the state knows they have enough workers and cooperate with investigators, among other requirements. Amanda Slater, director of the Office of Licensing, said it's still possible that her department will revoke the facility's license pending the outcome of their investigation. She added that a licensing investigation generally follows after investigations by the police and child protective services. "When something tragic as a loss of life happens, we do try to act the right way," she said. "We felt it was important to do an agency action just to ensure the health and safety of those individuals there until we can conclude that investigation." Osgood said Maple Lake Academy is appealing the state's action. "We dispute the finding of a violation regarding failure to provide necessary medical care," he said. Maple Lake Academy's website says it caters to teenagers who have autism, anxiety, depression, and certain learning difficulties. Its girls' campus can house up to 15 young people, while a nearby boys' home has 16 beds. The facility has had limited interactions with state regulators in the past. The Maple Lake Academy boys' campus was required by the state to take corrective action in 2020 after a staff member twisted a boy's nipple as part of a game, records show. The facility reported that it issued a warning to the employee and reminded employees about maintaining appropriate boundaries. Youth treatment centers in Utah have been under scrutiny in recent years as the Salt Lake Tribune documented instances of abuse, neglect, and mistreatment of young people. That reporting led to legislative action in 2021 that marked the first reform of the so-called troubled teen industry in 15 years. The new law placed limits on use of restraints, drugs, and isolation rooms in youth treatment programs. It also required facilities to document any instance in which staff use physical restraints and seclusion and to submit reports to the Office of Licensing. It is utterly tragic that these headlines are becoming more common. These types of occurrences may have always been a part of the so-called troubled teen industry, and perhaps just went unreported, which is even worse. But now is the time for this to change, for this abuse and mistreatment of struggling young adults to stop. To further this message, I spoke to Madison. This conversation was extremely difficult for Madison at times, and there are trigger warnings of addiction and abuse, so please listen with discretion. Despite this conversation being difficult, Madison was determined to get her story out there and to let the world hear it. and to highlight the activism that she has taken against the troubled teen industry. So here is Madison talking about the French Camp Academy in Mississippi. So hello, Madison, and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to come along and share your story with all of us today. Would you like to start by introducing yourself to the listeners?
Hi, my name is Madison. I live in Jersey City right now. I bartend, and that's about it.
And you attended a program called French Camp Academy, is that right?
Yep, yeah, it was in Mississippi.
Mississippi, but it's got the name French Camp, so that's kind of confusing right out the gate. Is that something that you thought when you first heard the name?
Everyone says that. Everyone asks if we speak French, and we don't. It's, I think, something about French settlers that being there, and it's like in a historic location, and on like the Natchez Trace, it's like a famous history thing, so they named the school after that, the school after the town.
Right, okay. And do you have any idea when the school was set up, who ran the school, any history of kind of where it was before you went there, and maybe even where it is now?
I know it's always been there it's really old. I don't want to say like 100 years old, but like it seems that way. Like
it seems very dated.
For a while. And like
a question that I always ask people when we're discussing sort of their experiences within this industry is what life was like before you were placed into this program.
Yeah, my life was a little chaotic, I guess. Both of my parents are addicts, so we didn't really have any stability or anything. So going there was kind of like a last resort for the family. So I guess it was not great.
Was it a decision that your parents made for you attending French camp, or was that somebody else's?
My father was, I don't know really where he was, but he wasn't around. I know he was definitely going through like homeless things, and my mother was in jail, so we were kind of on the streets, and my grandparents heard of this place through a friend, and I don't know, they thought that would be a good idea.
Wow. So through a very unfortunate set of circumstances, you found yourself with a need for a place to take you in, to care for you, offer you shelter, education, food, and all of those things that come with a stable home environment.
Yes, definitely.
And it sounds like your grandparents were kind of at a loss of how to give you those things and provide you with those things at that time. So if somebody came to them and told them about this program that could offer you all of those things, in that set of circumstances, that sounds like, you know, the answer to all of the problems that come with trying to take care of a young person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was also because it's like targeted towards troubled teens and children, so they like assuming from my parents' situation that me and my sister needed some extra attention, I guess.
Do you feel like that's a true statement? Do you feel like you were troubled in that sense, or do you feel like that was kind of the issues of your parents were being reflected onto you?
Yeah, I definitely think it was that, the second one, because me and my sister were like playing sports, doing really well. I was on like the honors program in my middle school, so I don't know, I felt like I wasn't that bad.
Compared to some of the other stories that we've heard, some of the experiences that come through on documentaries like The Last Stop about the Elan School, your set of circumstances seems almost like an anomaly compared to many other people that have been put through these programs, because some people's behaviors were extremely difficult. Some people's mental health was deteriorating, but it sounds like, you know, and some parents would have children who they caught trying their first cigarette, And some parents would have children who were suffering with things like self-harm and suicidal ideation, but it doesn't sound as if you had any of those things at all. You actually sound like you were achieving quite highly in school and kind of okay. Mm-hmm. And I can see that this is difficult for you to talk about, so please let me know if you need to take a minute or anything like that at any point.
No, it's okay.
You aren't sure where your parents are at the moment. They struggle with addiction. You are living sporadically with your grandparents, and life is very chaotic. Your grandparents feel like you need extra support, even though it sounds like that might not have been the case necessarily. So they try and find some stability for you and your sister through French Camp Academy. So how old are you, and how old is your sister at the time you're introduced to this academy?
So it happened like rather quickly, because we were staying at my mom's apartment while she was like gone doing her own thing. And then like her friend let us stay with her, and then my grandparents picked us up, and then we went to the school like a month later. So I was 15. Yeah, I turned 15 there, and then she's 3 years younger, so she was like 12, 13.
Oh my goodness, 12. What? That is such a young age. Did you feel some responsibility towards your sister as well, being the older child and having a difficult upbringing and all of this kind of upheaval in your life?
Yeah, I was definitely like her mother. You know, I made sure she was taken care of. So like, it was weird at the school because, you know, they separated us.
Having siblings attend the same program with the kinds of tactics that we've heard talked about on this show, a lot of staff members might not think that you can achieve the work that they would like you to achieve in the correct way if you have a bond so strong with somebody else in the group as well. So exactly. I'm sure we can talk a bit more about that as we go, but French Camp Academy is talked about by a family friend or a friend of your grandparents. So do they drive you there? Do you go together as a unit?
Yeah, so we drove there to check it out, watch around. It was pretty like farmy, like chickens, and you know, I was living like on the beach before this, so it was such a culture shock. And like, you know, like wooded cabins, like houses made out of wood and stuff. It was just homey, small.
Mm-hmm. Would you say it kind of felt very rural and in the middle of nowhere?
Oh, definitely. Like yeah, for sure. It was definitely in the middle of nowhere. You had to drive 20 minutes to like get to like a Walmart or something.
Wow. So the nearest town or village was pretty far away from where the actual academy itself was situated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that 20 minutes by foot or by car?
Car.
So a pretty long walk if you were to decide that you wanted to walk to Walmart.
Oh, you couldn't. And they made sure of that. And then they would say like there was like people in the woods. Like they really wanted to discourage running away.
So you were surrounded by woodland in this area then?
Yeah. So yeah, it was beautiful in the middle of nowhere, but yeah.
And when you say they, that's a word that you've used a couple of times now, and I may have even subliminally said it as well. Who are they, these people?
I guess like the staff members, like there's like a, you know, family of people like in charge, and like it's weird because like you have the dean who's like related to the principal, and the mayor is married to the assistant dean. And like it's like everyone's like related and connected, and like the people that like super believe in this school and this Jesus stuff, I call them they. So like they're like the ones.
So this camp has a religious underpinning.
Yeah, super.
Okay. Do you remember the exact day that you arrived and how you were introduced to the first staff members? And you know, you've mentioned your first impressions were, you know, it was big, open, spacious, very different to the beach where you were before. There's chickens, you know, it's beautiful there. What are your first impressions of being introduced to staff members and where you'll be sleeping and those types of things?
I really like, I don't really remember my first day. I remember my first time there and like talking to it was like the assistant dean, and she's like a grandma and like, you know, Southern, and it was like super homey feeling. And I was like obsessed with Hogwarts at the time. So I was kind of hoping like maybe going here would be kind of cool. Like, so I don't know. I was like, I was a very positive kid. So I didn't really feel any type of way, I guess, being intimidated a little bit. I don't know. It was like such a shock. I feel like everything just happened so fast, like leaving Florida and then going to this place. Like I felt like I was still adjusting to saying goodbye to my friends, and I didn't even know what was happening at the time.
And this is Mississippi. So how far is that journey from Florida to Mississippi? Did you take the whole journey in a car?
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like now my geography is not the best, but I feel like that's a significant journey from A to B.
Oh my God. Yeah. I'm like, I don't ever want to be in a car again. I hate driving.
How long is that in hours? How long is that drive?
18. I want to say 18, but I don't know if that's from Mississippi to New Jersey, because I also drove here.
Okay, but then, okay, so you've got Mississippi's in like the south, and then New Jersey's on the east coast-ish.
Yeah.
And then Florida's kind of a little bit further down from New Jersey.
Yeah.
So if you can get to Florida from New Jersey in a few hours on a plane, I'm guessing that the car journey from New Jersey or Florida to Mississippi is not too different.
I think it's about the same.
So 18 hours is a ridiculous amount of time. I think if I wanted to travel anywhere in the world, it wouldn't even take that many hours now on a plane to get anywhere on the globe. So to be in a car for that amount of time, traveling literally across the country, is a pretty wild journey to take for you and your sister to be dropped off and left at this place on your own.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was like we were told to like go get everything we could fit in the car and just go. It was so weird.
And is this a place that your grandparents are going to remain? Do they stay in the area, or do they go and live nearby? How does this work?
They're like an hour away, an hour and a half away.
Okay, so you aren't being dropped off and then they're making the 18-hour journey back to Florida.
No, yeah, they lived in Mississippi too.
Right,
so
okay.
Word of mouth heard about it.
That makes a bit more sense, because I was thinking, I'm sure there's got to be programs closer to Florida that would, you know, kind of offer the same service that your grandparents are looking for. But that kind of makes me realize why they made that decision.
Yeah.
So once you have arrived, it's a bit of a blur. Everything happens very fast. The belongings that you've taken with you in the car, are you allowed to keep those with you when you move into your room? Do you have your own room? Do you live in a dorm?
Yeah, so we're assigned our dorm. Haley, my sister, goes to hers. I go to mine. We unpack, but they have to like go through what's appropriate, like no cameras, no phones, no iPods, CDs, any electronic kind of thing that's like connection to the outside world. Inappropriate underwear, like lingerie, clothing that was inappropriate, like personal items, whatever. Like they just had to like make sure it wasn't inappropriate. Books, stuff like that. Like
you said you're obsessed with Hogwarts at this point, so I'm guessing, and there's something about Harry Potter in a lot of these religious-based programs that the people that lead the groups really have a thing against, and I've been told it's because of magic and the books being so worldly and having such influence over young people and the teenage mind. But I'm guessing that if you were to take Harry Potter books with you, that would be something that was confiscated.
Definitely, yeah. So I read a lot. I as a kid, so it was so hard giving up, like, because the majority of the stuff I took with me were my books. I just couldn't read anything, and it was like there was just really no way to get my head out of this space.
Were you offered any reading material that came from like a campus library or something that contains sort of like church-based text or approved writings?
So I I started reading, like, these like how to be a housewife fucking
oh my goodness,
and like setting the table. I know how to throw like a 1980s dinner party. Like, it's crazy. Like, just being submissive. It's just, I read a lot of those.
And they were the approved texts of the academy?
Yeah, they were always in the office. If you wanted to read, you could just go ask for one of them.
It sounds like the books were as dated as the building is.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh my goodness. So once you arrive and you're settled in and you've had kind of some of your personal belongings and the books that kind of are quite sentimental to you are taken away from your possession, how does it work? What are you told is the average day or week and the scheduling of your stay during this time? And how long are you expected to be there for?
I guess like until I graduated. I don't know. I felt like I didn't feel like I was stuck there at first. Like, I felt like if I really didn't like it, or like if I needed to, I would be like able to leave or something. I don't know. They just made it sound really simple. Like, you have school, you have like, it's called work crew, where you go to work after school and then you go to your dorm and then everybody goes to dinner in the same big dining hall, but the boys and girls are separated because, God forbid, you talk to a member of the opposite sex. And at night we do like some sort of like Bible service and then go to bed.
And when you say work crew, what does work consist of?
So it depends. Like, it's basically, it could be anything. Like, we were in charge of like making and serving dinner for the entire campus, and then cleaning up, and then like maintaining like the barns. It was pretty much, we were hired to maintain the place that we lived at. So, like, I literally helped build the dean's house. Like, yeah, crazy.
Isn't that such a common theme amongst these programs?
Mm-hmm.
People can say, wow, there used to be a tree there, but I dug out the stump, or that house there, that building in the middle, I did that, or that driveway, I paved that driveway. I feel like that is such a common thing that we hear in these interviews. I understand like earning your keep when you're older and you go and live on a commune and people pitch in, and that's kind of like, you don't pay rent, but you cook or you clean or you harvest or you plant and all of these things. But when you're 15 years old and you're assigned work crew, it's child labor, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And we had a different uniform for every like part of the day. So like when you're at school, you have your school uniform, work, you have your work uniform, and like when you leave, you have to wear a certain outfit in the dorm because you can't arouse the men, the dorm dad. And like, so getting out, I never really felt like I had a style or knew what to wear. Like, or like moving here, like I'm working in New York City bartending, and these women are like half dressed, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's such a culture shock still.
Okay, so there's lots to unpack in what you've just said there. What does the school, right, first of all, what does school entail? Are you taught sort of like a general curriculum, maths, English, science?
Yeah, we had like your basic school curriculum with like, I had like we had like mandatory religious class, New Testament, Old Testament. I forget the other two I took. One of them was like a family class. My dorm mom taught that one.
Even though there are religious undertones to the program, it's not all faith-based. They do offer classes that fit with mainstream education.
Mm-hmm.
And when you finish the program, are you supposed to graduate or complete with equivalent of the year that you would have studied in a typical public school?
Yeah, I could like I went to college right after. They definitely encourage like Christian colleges afterwards. A lot of people like will stay and like get jobs on the campus and do like whatever teacher things.
Well, that is a question I was going to ask later, if some of the staff were made up of previous participants in the program.
Mm-hmm. Like students, like it's like, like a student will marry like one of the teachers, and then they'll become dorm parents, and then like have like, it's just like, or like, just they like staying.
It sounds much like the troubled teen industry, and this is a word I've used quite often, but it sounds very incestuous.
Yeah, totally. I mean, no, I don't know. It is weird.
And what does the school uniform look like?
So, like blue, whatever, collared khaki shirt, khaki pants, and then the work shirt was a gray t-shirt, and then like I think jeans or khaki pants, and then yeah, pretty much.
And then the outfits that you were supposed to wear in the dorms, a lot of the time we've heard on this show that they have to be unbranded, certain shades and colors. You're not allowed to wear logos or have any designer types of clothing. Is this kind of similar to those things we've heard before?
I feel like I don't remember about logos and stuff, but it was like, like 3 fingers on the shoulder, not too short, stuff like that, more so.
So more around modesty than a kind of
uniformity.
Mm-hmm.
The uniformity was outside in the working in the school.
And again, that comes from what you've just said around when you left, you felt like you didn't have a fashion sense or an individual identity around things that you liked personally, or a preference to things that you enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the modesty thing still kind of has stuck with you to this day, because you work with people that wear kind of more revealing clothing or dress without kind of the 3 fingers on the shoulder, and that makes you think to yourself, oh, hang on a minute, that wouldn't have been allowed in the program that I attended.
Yeah, it is weird sometimes, but I go out and like wear whatever, but it's like sometimes I'm like, I'll still feel on the inside like it's just, I don't know, it's like a whole different identity sometimes I like immerse myself in.
And you've mentioned now dorm mums and dorm dads. So do you call each other brother and sister?
No,
but you have dorm mums and dorm dads. What is the role of the dorm mum and dad?
So they like, their house was attached to the dorm, like, so like there's like 2 doors and they could lock it at night, and like that's like their house, and then we have like our dorm. And like, so, they got us up for breakfast, prayer, got us to school, prayer before school. It was like very like, so, like very like timed out. Like, you get up for breakfast, have to be there at a certain time, you have a certain amount of time to get ready because you have to go pray for 10 minutes or whatever, then you go to school and like whatever. And like, so they just kind of were like our stand-in parents.
Right. So a very regimented routine.
Definitely.
And I'm just thinking to clarify, the dorm mum and dads, are they actually in relationships with each other? Or are they just assigned to a dorm?
They have kids, like they're like a real family. It's so, yeah.
And this is so, and they kind of are all related to the dean in some way.
Not all of them. Like, there's definitely like some that are connected, but there's a lot of people like that come in and interview, and they're like, I want to be a part of this, and they do it and they love it, and they so like not all of them, but like more so like the dean and them are like more like higher up doing like teaching and principaling. I don't know. I think his niece is a dorm mom now. She just got married, I guess. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so French Camp Academy is still a place that functions and exists today.
Yeah, definitely.
And the dean, is he like a pastor or a minister? Or does he have some type of preaching status?
For sure, he is. Whatever. I don't really know the correct terminology, but he preaches. He'll do like sermons. He it's the same one now that when I was in school.
And the sermons would take place. You said you had to kind of do morning and evening prayer with your dorm mum and dad, and they oversaw that. But when you did church-related education during school time, was that led by qualified teachers?
Yeah, they had whatever degree from whatever religious school, but the church was usually Wednesday night, Sunday morning. Once a month at school, we took an hour to do some sort of like religious event, and then like there was also some like other few like times where they would do like sermons for like random events and stuff like that.
And were these religious events the ones that were run by the dean?
Yeah, I guess like the school as a whole, but he was the one. He would preach, other people would preach, like everyone kind of had their hand in saying something.
It's really interesting for me to try and paint a picture of the place that you stayed, because it sounds like you had a very much a hierarchy in place in terms of staff members, people that have different roles and responsibilities, which doesn't sound too different to how a normal workplace would function. But then a normal workplace doesn't have a room attached to a dormitory where the staff can go in and out and watch the young adults sleeping. So that's kind of where the lines kind of tend to blur. And having qualifications from religious schools doesn't necessarily mean that you have qualifications in teaching mainstream education. So I thought it was just interesting to raise that point and to ask whether the dean does any practicing of preaching himself, because sometimes we've heard in these more religious-based groups that by the time residents take part, the people that run the place or are in charge of the place don't actually attend services because they have other people to run the services for them. So it's interesting to hear that the dean still to this day does lead those sessions.
Definitely. Like a lot of like teachers will be dorm parents, and they'll do like sermons. It's just everyone, it was like a big community. Everyone had their hand in and took turns taking, doing sermons and Sunday morning. We had like an actual pastor on Sunday mornings, but like, guest speakers. It was very communal. I hate saying that.
I feel like a lot of the time church congregations are communities, and I know that on this show we focus on high demand religious groups and cult-like groups and groups that use coercion and manipulation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every single aspect of religion is culty or manipulative or coercive. It's often how the scripture and texts are interpreted by certain individuals who branch away from their church or their congregation to then inflict their own idea of religion onto their congregants, or literally translate or adapt the scripture to their environments, which then results in these cult-like methods of control that we explore quite often. So I think it's okay for you to say that it was very community-like. Everybody pitched in. The teachers also took extra shifts to be dorm mums and dads, and
it was also like a place for them to live.
Yeah, so that's something I was going to ask you more about as we went on, but it feels like we've kind of organically arrived at that point. So just talk us through. So you've been living with your grandparents on the beach, and they say, we need somewhere stable for you. So you relocate. They live an hour and a half away from Mississippi. So they say, we've been told about this place, French Camp Academy. You and your sister, 15 and 12, you can go here, you can be taken care of. You arrive there. It seems beautiful. It's very kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it seems like a really nice place and a big change from the beach, but maybe it'll be good. The initial introduction to the academy is not so great because you have some meaningful things taken from you, which obviously has quite a profound effect on you even today. And then you are assigned your dorm mum and dad. You're kind of told how things are going to work. You have 3 different types of uniform. There's work uniform, school uniform, and dorm uniform. And you get into the swing of things, and it feels every day feels like the same, but there's quite a few church related activities that you're expected to take part in, and that kind of fills up your Wednesday evenings, your Sunday mornings, and then a few other times throughout the year. So that to me feels a lot like a lot of the other programs that we've discussed on the show. But what was different about your story was that actually it functions as a commune at the same time. So there are families living here, as well as residents such as yourself taking part in the program that is assigned for air quotes troubled teens. So then it starts to feel like the program Straightway that we've talked about on the show quite a lot, where families lived in mobile homes and camper vans, and they all worked on building the pastor a massive big house on this huge bit of land that he owned. And they had kind of like their every move monitored, and there was definitely a hierarchy in place, and there were very heavy religious undertones to everything that happened with Straightway. So what was interesting about your story was that it's definitely a troubled teen program, but it also functions as a commune for troubled families who are looking for the same things that your grandparents were looking for you and your sister, the shelter, the education, and all of those things that they felt you needed at that time. Would you say that's kind of like an accurate depiction of the place where you lived?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like in the families, though, they had to be religious to be there. Like they had to be like on board, interviewed, you know what I mean? For like the teens that were sent there, they didn't really have a choice. So like I know it was like young kids, like, you know, like kindergarten age kids, like going there, you know, it was very crazy. But like, you know, the families, they'd have these fucking 6-year-olds in the dorm, and
That's wild. So you're 15 and you're bunking with 6-year-olds?
no, it was all age, like, so I would be with a bunch of 15-year-olds.
Right. So you're not bunking with 6-year-olds, but they would have dorms that were specially assigned for different age groups. So this is another example of how you are distanced and separated from your younger sister.
Yeah.
How
Like,
does that feel for you at that time, wondering if she's kind of okay and being looked after and comfortable at nighttime and all of those things?
it was weird. We would like pass each other notes, or like we would sneak out at night to hang out on like the fire escape of my dorm. We found ways to like chill, I guess. But they kept us so busy during the day. And like our first 2 weeks there, we weren't even, I feel it was like the first month or something, like we couldn't have any contact with our like outside families. So like there was just no one, like it was just very isolating.
For the first month? For the first month, that entire month?
I forget if it was like, it was a certain amount of time when you first get there. It was like to adjust, to like immerse yourself in the school and like, you know what I mean? So but like when we did have contact, like it was once a week for 15 minutes and the phone call was often monitored.
Okay, which again is another thing that is so common throughout these programs. Do you ever recall cases where people had their phone calls ended if they tried to talk about the program maybe not being as good for them as parents and family members thought it would be?
No, it was so odd because kids complained all the time. Like, and I feel like looking back, I made like a Facebook post and I've got a lot of responses from people like with, you know, about my school, and they said like that, you know, the teachers are telling them like we need this and like we're just acting out, it's not that bad, like the, you know, like our parents are being told this, so like when we're like crying on the phone we're just being like dramatic teenagers. But yeah, it didn't really matter what you said about it. And plus I didn't really have anywhere else to go anyways, so.
But I feel like that may make the situation even more restricting and difficult for somebody who feels like they don't have anywhere else to go, even if they decide that they would like to leave because the program doesn't work for them. You know, you've had your books taken away from you. That's not something that you want to tolerate, or a place you want to live in, you know, where you can't have the things that mean so much to you. And to feel like you have nowhere else to go must be really difficult, especially when your sister's there as well and you have kind of almost that responsibility on your shoulders and things to consider if you were to try and leave.
Yeah, we everyone talks about running away, but like, and people have tried, but like the problem is they usually get picked up, or it's just too far for them, or like, because at one point we were just like, I'd rather be in foster care, or like other family members have offered to take us in, or like my friends' parents actually offered to, but I just feel like my grandparents and my family were so like brainwashed with the school at the time. They thought like, this is what we needed. We're not like leaving. Like this is what these girls need.
So were your grandparents quite faith-based in the way that they lived their lives?
No, I just don't think they wanted the trouble, to be honest with you. I think it was just like an easy way out, I guess. I don't know. I really don't like. I've cut off that whole side of my family because of being sent to the school. So I don't really think there's any answers that would satisfy me at this point in time anyway. So I'll just always not know.
And you've talked about there being a dean and religious services and morning and evening prayer. Was a particular version of the Bible that was focused on by this group? Was there a particular type of Christianity that they aligned themselves with, or was it kind of just like a mismatch of everything? Some people focus on the King James Bible, some people look at the Old Testament, the New Testament, some people use fundamentalism or Pentecostalism. Was there anything specific about this group and their teachings?
I feel like it was super like basic, like really intense Presbyterian, old school, like, like 80s and or like, like back in the day, nun influence, like children beating, like kind of stuff like that, like like back in the day kind of stuff, like not advanced in like the teachings of like how like counseling kids and like stuff like that,
gender equality.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that.
And when you talked about the men and women or boys and girls or gender separation, I mean, that's all good and well if you want to stop boys and girls from touching each other or being intimate with each other or speaking with each other or whatever the reasons for the restriction in that particular communication. But of course, not everybody will identify as heterosexual, gender conforming people. So how was that managed within the academy?
Okay. Usually like if they find out like people are mingling in the dorms, like they move the girls around, like lots of like one girl had to like write like all this like as all these essays and like talk to the dean about like every like going to all these like meetings and like focus whatever like prayers and stuff like that. Definitely frowned upon for sure.
but it did happen.
Yeah, for sure.
That's something I don't understand about the old doctrine and practices is that so much is done to try and stop relations before marriage or
even straight kids found their ways. You can't stop kids, like, well, you can help educate them, but like
there's something to be said about raging hormones and development and growth and all of those things and the lengths that people will go to. I saw a Reddit post the other day that said it was like a not suitable for work ask Reddit post about what's the most ridiculous thing you've done whilst horny, and one of the responses was something like drove like 200 miles like for a girl to help me like masturbate and then drove 200 miles back again. And it was one of those Reddit posts that was repurposed into like a BuzzFeed article, because BuzzFeed these days tend to get all their article content from different threads that have popped up on Reddit. So that was But you're right, people will go to some pretty extreme lengths when they are feeling in the mood for it. So I'm sure that, people found a way to kind of meet that meet that need or urge or a kind of sense of gratification in one way or another somehow.
Yeah, definitely.
So how qualified were the staff members to teach you? You said that they had accreditations from religious schools.
I'm pretty sure they're all like college educated. I honestly don't know. I really couldn't tell you.
And how many residents were there per dorm, roughly?
So it's like I lived with maybe, it could be like, sometimes it was 9 girls, sometimes it was like 15. And the dorm parents, you know, they usually had like 2 kids, sometimes a ton, like 4. But you know, like, so it was like 9 to 15 girls.
Wow. So you're kind of really painting a picture there with the amount of dorm mums and dads that exist, because if you've got 15 students or residents or participants or whatever kind of term that you want to apply to this program, if you've got 15 and there's kind of 2 to every dorm mum and dad, then you're looking at 7 to 8 dorm mums and dads just straight away with.
Yeah, there's a lot of staff members.
That kind of begins to paint the picture of how many people lived on this commune as part of the overall running of the compound. So how many people do you think lived there, or what's the largest amount of people you think roughly lived there while you attended?
I want to say like 300 people.
Wow.
Maybe less, maybe like 100. Oh God, but there's so many kids. I want to say 300. That's my best. 300
families. Do you think all of them were struggling, or do you think some of them were pulled towards having a religious community, or some of them looking for stability, or some of them just there for prosperity for their children?
I think they were all called for religious reasons. Because the vetting process is pretty intense. Like, I remember being a dorm student and they would have like families come in, like, and they're like, hey guys, like, these people are going to be hanging out with us for a morning prayer and breakfast. They're interested in being staff members at French camp. You know, just treat them like normal, have a conversation, you know, like whatever they're interviewing. So it was definitely like religious families that were coming in and like applying.
And Mississippi is in the deep south of America, which is kind of around the Bible Belt. So would you say that played a heavy part in such a large amount of people looking for Christian identity in this area?
Oh yeah. And even like, I would say the whole state has, like, it's so religious. Like, when I went to like Memphis with like friends for like breaks, like their families are going to church, and like these churches are huge, like huge communities of people, like thousands of people. Like, it's just crazy. It's so religious down there.
And you said that you weren't able to contact your grandparents for the first month that you lived there. Was there a time that they came to visit or check in on you, or a time that you were first able to contact them and tell them, you know, I'm here and I'm okay?
So I think the first person that I actually got in contact with was one of my aunts. And it was just a pretty like basic 15-minute conversation. And then, you know, like, how is it? Whatever. I was like, it's fucking weird. Like, I don't know how to answer that. You know, I was like, why can't me and my sister stay with one of you guys? Like, it was just weird. And then like, so we didn't really get to leave except for like holidays or like long weekends if your family lived close. Sometimes my grandparents would come pick us up. Most of the time we stayed because me and my sister also did sports. So we did sometimes have like tournaments and stuff. But yeah, for holidays, it just depended on whatever family member was in the mood to take in me and my sister. Like, sometimes we go to Texas or California. Like, Like to this day, I don't think I've had a consistent like holiday. It's just weird.
And when you were not going to visit family nearby or spend time with them, were you able to have leisure time for yourself? You said that you and your sister were involved in sports. So was there opportunities for you to have sort of downtime and do some of the things that you enjoyed doing?
There wasn't a lot of downtime, but I spent most of my downtime, like, reading, my 1980s dinner parties. And I did a lot of running. Like after school, I would run like 4 miles. And then like in the morning, I would run like 2. And like, I was just constantly like running and trying to not be in the dorm. But like, there's not a lot of downtime because it's like, work and then school and then homework. And then, so that was like the only time I could get out and like be away and just, not be there. But you had, there's a girl's side and a boy's side. So like, I just remember running like laps. And then like one day I was like, you know what? I'm just going to run wherever I want. And like, I've gotten questioned like a few times, but since I was like doing really well there and I started to like, get good grades and like go to like state competitions, they didn't really question me. So I kind of just had like even the dean's daughter like asked me to like be in a pageant with her. Like just it's bizarre like stuff,
Okay, so you're kind of like you're like a shining star and you are noticed and you are favored then by those in positions of power or those higher up the hierarchy. Why do you think that was?
I don't know. Like I remember like really getting into it, like being like, oh, maybe like this stuff is real. Like, and I started going to like the voluntary Bible studies and like just being like really gung ho about it and like volunteering and like doing events. And like, I would get up at 5 a.m. every day and go running with the dean's wife and like, the assistant dean's. So she was a woman. So I would go running with her and like, just, like really like immersed myself in the school. But it was just nice because it was like I had like a sense of family and like they're making me dinners and I don't have to go to the dining hall and eat that shitty fucking food, and like I get out of work crew because we're going on a trip to the hair salon and like it's stuff like that.
Wow. Okay, so let's just pick this apart a little bit. So you initially arrive and you have this kind of difficult experience, and then you integrate into the life of living. You kind of go day to day, but then all of a sudden you pick back up on some of the hobbies that you enjoy. That includes reading, even though the material's like outdated and not stuff that you would usually personally pick to read. But then you start doing a bit of running, and then you start to enter competitions and you're doing well in these competitions. And that is noticed by some people in the hierarchy. And then they kind of pick you up to take part in some air quotes privileged experiences. Is this because you are a model resident that they can use as an example of the work that they are doing, or is it because they know that you don't have a family environment and they want to invite you into one? Is it because you've had lots of periods of upheaval and transition in your life, so they know that they can give you the word of the Bible and you may take it on board more so than others? I'm very skeptical when it comes to these programs. So a lot of the time now, which I should apologize for, when it comes to the troubled teen industry, I automatically assume the worst. So what would you say is their reasoning behind these decisions to include you in these, again, air quotes, privileged experiences?
Yeah, I think it's like, I want to say it's like all of the above, it's weird, but I know there's a lot of good-hearted people there that do want to do good. And it's like, because when I made like my Facebook post and it went viral, it was crazy. Like I had teachers like messaging me like, thank you for doing this, like exposing them and whatever, like, and all I wanted to know is if someone had like similar experiences. I was just genuinely curious, and like I didn't realize that how many responses I would get. So I know it's not all bad, but like I know there's like the power hungry, like brainwashing part of it is so ingrained. Like the couple good eggs, it's not enough for this, you know what I mean? So it's like I think they saw that I was doing well, and they wanted it looks good, you know, like troubled kid turns around, like, look, you know, here's our protege school, you know, it's like an advertisement almost.
Yeah,
like,
but it's wrong because you were doing okay before there. You didn't need them to put you on that path. You were already there.
Like I was always a good student. I was always athletic. Like, and you know, me and my sister had the privilege of having a professional tennis player as our stepdad. So like, it made the school look good to have like all, like they wanted an emphasis on like, you know, winning competitions in football and like just making, because it makes the school look good. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know. I want to say good things, but I guess not sometimes, you know.
And I feel like a lot of the time when people have had these experiences, they find it difficult to talk about them in a negative way because they have had positive experiences within the overall time spent. So and a lot of the time, some of the people that you would have met, you know, the mums and dads that you've spoken about that genuinely were good people, you feel like you're talking about, when you say the word they, it's almost like you're applying your coming here and speaking on the show as in negative connotations to all of the people that touched your life whilst you were there. And I don't think that that's necessarily true. It's also similar to a memoir that I've just finished reading by Mary Mahoney, where it's titled Abnormal Normal, where she talks about her life in the Children of God. And she joined the Children of God, and there's a lot of child abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and horrible, really terrible things that happened within that movement. And it's important to realize that even though the children experienced that abuse in the same way that you and your sister may have experienced difficult things in this program, there were parents who had been coerced and manipulated in such a way themselves that they were trapped. They didn't know where to go or what to do. They were in foreign countries where they didn't speak the language. They had no money to their name. They had their passports confiscated. They had no way to go and leave with their children. And even if they decided to do that, a lot of people were either born into this movement and would have no idea where to go, what to do, who to speak to, because they didn't know anybody outside of this movement. But on top of that, if it was a movement that they joined later on in life, usually at that point, they're so cut off from their family, their friends, and anything that's familiar, that, again, they wouldn't know how to leave, where to go, who to speak to. So I can understand completely when you say that you almost don't want to tell us that some of the experiences were bad because of the mums and dads and family members that you met who were involved in this program, who weren't necessarily in their core bad people.
Exactly. Yeah. Some of them really, you know, cared.
And some of them probably think about you to this day and you know, and feel bad about not saying something when they saw something that they questioned, or whether they took part in something that they knew was wrong. You know, a lot of the time, and I don't know if I'm kind of just, again, assuming, but a lot of the time with these types of communities, there is often a level of discipline that is encouraged with young people that do not conform to the rules, and that includes things like spanking. I don't know if you know of anything like that happened where you lived in the community.
Definitely. We did paddlings. So it was like kind of at your own discretion. Like my sister, I think she got paddled a lot more than me because her dorm dad was a lot more gung-ho about it. Like it just kind of depended on the person. Like, because he would do it like for being late for prayer or not made a bed, or like my dorm dad, he did it more like for severe things. The dean, I was paddled by the dean. Everybody was kind of, it was like you're paddled, you write the essays, you're locked outside. It's, the punishments are like up to your own creative discretion. So it does, like, but I remember like it was almost like kind of like a game sometimes. Like the kids would be like, yeah, this dorm dad has holes in their paddles, so it's more aerodynamic, or this kid put his hands on his butt and broke all of his fingers, like, and that's like not uncommon. Like my ass was so black and torn. I remember had a state match, and I was so mad because I couldn't practice that day, and I was just like, it was a tennis match, and it was my senior year, and it was a lot riding on this, and I couldn't. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. And my friend took a photo because I felt like, I was like, this is enough. Like this is enough. We're being like abused and brainwashed. And because she snuck her camera, but the lady I went running with in the mornings at 5 a.m. found her camera and saw the photo and was like, you need to delete this right away. So we never really got a chance to do anything. It was just, very common. But yeah, my sister got it more often for sure.
It's so wild to me that you say, it's just one of those things that happened, because it's definitely not typical, I think, for people to discipline their children in that way. And again, another thing I read in Mary's memoir is that they would drill holes in the paddles so that it would create quicker. Yeah, it would create more of like a suctioning blow when they used it across children's backsides.
I'm like feeling it, like I can feel, I'm having like,
sorry, I didn't mean to cause that reaction in you. It was just, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh my goodness, I've just read about this, and I can't imagine somebody, and I know that these were methods of discipline that were used sort of, I don't know, in the Victorian times, maybe a little bit after that, but they're definitely, I think, illegal now. Striking your children in certain ways is not legal here in the UK. So I can't imagine that, the ruler over the hands and things like that were used in English schools over here is not something that's allowed anymore by any chance. You would definitely, not only would you lose your job, but you would definitely, you'd be charged with abuse for that.
We have a teacher that threw a stapler at a student's head, and this was like 3 years ago. A metal stapler, he threw it at his head because I think he was sleeping or answered the wrong answer.
Discipline is so normalized for you that you just talk about it like, you talk about it more casually than you talk about running laps around the premises, which to me is absolutely wild. And your sister maybe on the slightly more rebellious side than you, which I feel is in keeping with the youngest child always is supposed to be the most rebellious. Yeah. And you said that may have had something to do with her dorm dad as well. And a point I just wanted to make there was that often, and this may not have been the case with your situation at all, and it's just something that I wanted to point out, and again kind of comes back to the Children of God movement that we've mentioned on the episode so far, is that often when people are given this level of freedom and they have religion as almost an excuse to deliver this type of discipline or to carry out these things that are not necessarily right, it's almost like giving predators permission to do things that the average everyday person wouldn't necessarily think to do. And I know that the free love doctrine that was introduced into the Children of God absolutely definitely invited in predators. So in this environment, even though there is a strategic and strict vetting process with who was allowed in, dependent on their religious affiliations, that doesn't necessarily mean that there are any background checks on whether they've been involved in being charged with crimes of abuse or child neglect or any of those things. So it may be one of those situations, and I'm not saying that this is one of them, it's just an example of how one of these situations might end up inviting in predators or people who seek to perform this level of harm on other people to feel more powerful, for their own gratification, for a number of reasons that people might want to harm children in the way that paddling harms a child. I don't know what your thoughts and feelings are on that as a subject.
I definitely know they were there. I know, like, not personally, but like, you know, someone very close to me was like asked by a teacher like if he could have a kiss. Like, I know I've always felt weird around men, so I never really made a point to be alone with them, you know what I mean? But like I know, like, like some instances where it's like staff members' children were excused for doing like some horrible things because they're the sons of, you know, whomever important, so they get away with it.
That's another level of something that is not kind of not explored by me in my previous statement, where, you know, you've got adults in positions of power, but you've also got residents, students, participants, again, whatever term you'd like to use. You've got those people who may also find themselves wanting to carry out some type of harm on another person and almost being given permission or circumstance to do that, because the discipline that is applied to other residents is not necessarily applied to them just through association.
Exactly. Like, I remember the final conclusion for the instance that am referring to. Like, it was because she was asking for it and provoking and like dressing, you know, whatever. So that was like that wrap up, you know what I mean? So, and that's like very common, I feel like like when the gentleman, like the teacher, asked for a kiss, he was still dorm sitting my dorm and his wife came up to prayer and he didn't, and I just remember like making a huge deal out of it, and I honestly don't think anything would have been done if I wasn't like so like vocal. And that was kind of like that was like the turning point for me of that school, like when I was like done going to the voluntary Bible studies and stuff. I was like, no, this is I'm done, you know, like that was the final like.
Okay, so you start doing laps, you are going to play tennis, you are excelling at the competitive sports side of things. you're taken to exclusive hairdressing appointments, and you're getting close to the inner circle, so to speak, of people, the dean, the dean's wife, the dean's daughter. They all take an interest in you. You take an interest in return in the more religious side of things by attending voluntarily extra services on top of the mandatory religious services that are required of each person. And you throw yourself into it, much like you do with your reading and your sports, kind of like get all or nothing, kind of like, I'm interested in this. I really kind of like the community feel around it. This is the first time I felt a part of something maybe bigger than myself. The first time I've been part of a family. Maybe there was like a love bombing aspect where you were kind of like told that you are loved and extremely important, and it's kind of filling a hole that you felt was missing from something before you moved there. So you take all of this on board, but then this particular occurrence of abuse happens and you snap out of that immediately and realize that actually this is not something that you want to be aligned with.
And then like I'm super social and like curious, and I started like asking around, and like I started this like notebook of like, and I would go to the students and like, I want to hear your wildest story. Like what do you know? Like what happened? And I'm hearing all these like things. And at first people didn't really want to talk to me because like, I was a favorite, but like I just, I'm a social nice person, like
but you're spending time with the dean and his wife and his daughters, so people are probably right to be a bit
exactly
reserved in terms of giving you information, because a lot of the time these places work on this self-policing system where if you see something that you think is against the rules, you are supposed to immediately report that to somebody so that that person can be disciplined.
Like, I was a bit of a kiss up, I did like rat people out, like, but I was also, babysitting their children, and it's like, I don't know, I just, at the time, I didn't realize what I was doing, but after the incident that happened, I just started getting curious about what was like going on, and a lot of like bad things, I guess, it just wasn't as peachy as it was seemed.
Okay, so this is super interesting, because when we talk about what we can do to help people come out of their own groups or movements on the show, we talk a lot about people using critical thinking or researching on the internet, and you don't have necessarily all the access to worldly tools like phones with Wi-Fi and 5G and books that are out, come from outside of the church. So you have all of these things that you can't access that may have given you some of the answers that you were looking for. So you kind of use a more forward thinking approach, and that is, I feel like something's not quite right here. How can I prove if it's right or wrong? I don't have access to the internet, to a library of books outside of the church and the community. How can I get the answers? I'll ask everybody about their experiences. So your research is person-centered approach.
Definitely. People oriented though, so it kind of makes sense.
And do people realize after a while that you are genuinely curious about their experiences and you're not looking to kind of rat them out or tell on them in some way?
Right. Yeah. Everybody like almost got like excited to like share in some of the stuff, and so I did that while I was in school, and I had my notebook, and then like a few years ago I kind of did the same thing on Facebook, and it was pretty much the same feedback, and it's like, I've got to do something with this information, I guess. But I knew at the time, like, it wasn't right. Like, something wasn't right. The fact that like they didn't believe this person at first, and like they were saying like she asked for it and stuff like that. I was like, what kid wants a 40-year-old man kissing them? Like, it was just weird. I don't know. And I trust this person, so obviously I'm not going to take anything lightly. So I just started trying to see what was going on, like under the surface, I guess.
And keeping a notebook and a diary of all of those things that were happening. Did anybody ever realize that that's what you were doing? Because I feel like that's something that you may have got in trouble for.
Yeah, I had to hide it for sure. Yeah, I feel like something happened, and like I think that's initially why they started targeting me, because that's when I got paddled, because I never really understood why I got in trouble. Like there was, I don't remember, like a lot. I like blocked it out. Even recently is like the first time I've ever really talked about it. So
and something you wrote in your notes to me that I thought was quite interesting was that when people get into trouble, there's actually different coloured uniforms or t-shirts that are specified for people when they are when they've done something wrong.
Yes, I forgot about that. It's like more so oriented when you do something with the opposite sex and like it's inappropriate. So like it's called social. But they put me on it like the last like 3 months of my senior year. I feel like it was definitely for a long time. I don't remember why.
Did you get caught with somebody?
No. No. Funnily enough. But I don't really remember why it was, but they put you on social for whatever. It's like I said, it doesn't have to be that. It's just kind of their own discretion. But like, so you basically wear a red t-shirt at school and work and in the dining hall, and anytime there's like an event, like a sports event or whatever on campus, you had to wear this red shirt, and you couldn't like talk to the boys or the boys vice versa. It was humiliating, and me and my sister made a joke of it, and we cut out A's. We wore around like an egg.
I was just about to say like you're an avid reader, so I'm sure you've read the Scarlet Letter.
Yeah, over summer before going
I was
back.
just about to say that. So yeah, it feels very much like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. So we had a good time. We made it work.
And how does it work with things like your diet? Are there any restrictions in terms of food? Is it very scheduled in terms of when and how you eat and how many of you eat at a time and all of those things?
Yeah, it was all scheduled. Like you had to eat breakfast at a certain time. Dinner was always at the same time. Lunch was always at the same time. Like you could have snacks, but like, the kitchen's only open like certain times. So like it was either like locked up or, when the dorm parents like open it for leisure time or whatever. But yeah, it was like all controlled, very shitty Cisco food. We made it, like we took part in like making a lot of it because we worked in the kitchens.
Another thing that I wanted to touch on that you mentioned in your notes that I think is quite important is the way that staff verbally threatened the residents to keep them in line with things like very fire and brimstone imagery. And you mentioned very early on about like there's people in the woods. If you try and run away, there's people in the woods and they'll know that you're trying to run away. But you also mentioned that you were threatened with things like if you try and leave, you'll be picked up by satanic cults, which I thought was very interesting.
The one that threw the stapler said that. He's been a teacher forever. He's wild, but he would say things like that. Like, they would just say like, you can't run away. Like, you're not going to make it anywhere. Or like, I was like so afraid of going to hell. Like I would stay up at night, like, and just be like terrified. Cause at the time, like before I went to school, before I went to high school, I was experiencing like my own my own feelings and my own sexuality, and like there was like a big emphasis on not being gay, and like I would just lay awake at night and just be terrified of going to hell. Like even when I was dating my ex-girlfriend, it still like was in my head that sometimes I'd be like, am I gonna go to hell for loving her? Like, and I'm like 25 years old. I'm so far out of school. It was just, it really gets into you.
When you were attending, did you find someone that you shared those romantic feelings with that was not of the opposite sex?
Not really. I didn't really do anything while I was there. I felt like I was like asexual almost sometimes. Like, I definitely like, I didn't really share that with anyone. I was a very fearful kid, and I'm still very fearful. So like, I didn't really want anyone to know, and like, I kind of just played the part of what I was as like student, kid, athlete. And I think I had like a boyfriend. Yeah, I did have a boyfriend, but it wasn't like, it was like more of a friend. Like me and him just hung out. Like we didn't really like
a beard. Is that, I don't know what the other I don't know what the other way round would be though. Is there a right expression to use when a woman has a boyfriend to conceal her sexual identity?
Yeah, I don't know, but it was funny because we were definitely like, we're still friends. Like we're just friends, like I think we kissed like one time, and it was like
But I feel like when you say that you never acted on any of those feelings that you had around your sexuality, and you almost functioned as somebody that was asexual, despite being kind of 15, 16, when your hormones are really kicking in, full rage, women's menstrual cycles are in full swing. So your body is really preparing for, sexual interaction.
I think it was all the trauma. Like I was just so caught up in my everything and adjusting, and it was just so much so fast. Like, but I do remember like I worked at a summer camp before going into my senior year, and I like lost my virginity and had sex once, and I cried. Like I just cried like to my dorm mom. I felt so guilty. I was like, I'm a whore. I did this thing, and it was like just like one time, and like I was so distressed. Like I remember feeling so guilty. Like, oh god.
And was this experience with a male or female?
Yeah, it was a dude.
Do you feel like a lot of that, maybe, I don't know, see, this is where it's hard having these conversations, but do you feel like maybe that reaction was due to you not feeling particularly attracted to men at all?
Maybe, yeah, definitely a little bit of both, because I wasn't myself, and I just, there was no like connection, or like I felt like it was just something I had to do because everyone, you know what I mean? Like everybody else was doing it, and I'm 17 and I gotta get this over with kind of thing. And it's like, I don't really want to explore my emotions with girls. And it's like, I'm harboring this guilt and fear, and it's just a lot.
When you say that you felt almost like you didn't want to explore your sexuality whilst you were a resident at French Camp Academy, it's very understandable, I think, in terms of what we've heard from previous interviews around the hell and fire and brimstone imagery that is fed to you whilst you are there, because not only are you trying to suppress thoughts of your own sexuality in terms of being more attracted to women than men, but you're also having to battle the fact that even if you were intimate with a man or a woman, you would have all of these things happen to you, or you would be kind of putting yourself into a place where you may be put in purgatory or hell for acting out on those impulses. So, you know, for you to be attracted to men or women and to act on that is one thing, but then to be attracted to women and to act on that solely, or to explore your thoughts and feelings around men and women and come to the conclusion that, oh, actually, I think I don't conform to the idea of man and woman and marriage and sex after marriage in our marital bed, but actually women are beautiful and you know, soft and supple and maybe cleaner and more in touch with their emotions because of years of you know, man up campaigns almost by marketing and social pressure and all sorts of different things. But, you know, thinking about that, you probably maybe you didn't even think to explore that part of you because you knew that, you know, aside from the man and woman doctrine, you also have a lot of pressure and rhetoric around why it's a sin to identify as gay.
Exactly. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes I'm a special case because, like, I was, you know, like, exploring these feelings. I remember, like, being 12 and my mom asked me, like, when I still lived in Florida, if I was a lesbian, and just being too embarrassed to, like, answer because I didn't really know. And then, like, I went to the school my first year, like, in the dorms, there was kind of an incident that happened with a female, and it kind of just turned me off for a while, and I don't know, it kind of like affected me for a little bit with women. And it's just with the being like, they did very detailed hell sermons and stuff, so I just feel like I didn't really want to just have any type of any connection with anyone.
So you are not, you're confused in your own thoughts and feelings and exploring your sexuality at an age where that is, you know, 15, 16 is maybe almost even the pinnacle of when sexual exploration begins to happen. Mm-hmm. So you are in a place that is very alien, and you are now volunteering to go to the extra religious services that have heavy connotations around why it's a sin to be gay. You have a difficult interaction with the hellfire and brimstone imagery that is fed to you with a woman, which then kind of makes you second guess, leaning towards maybe I am attracted to women. But then this event happens and you kind of lean away again, saying, well, that maybe not, because this was not the kind of interaction that I was imagining with other women. And then
yeah, you know, it was an older female and she took advantage because I was new and young. And that wasn't gentle, I guess.
And again, another example of when young, vulnerable people are placed into these programs and have these people in positions of power take advantage of them. I feel like that's another perfect example of that. You know, you're in a very vulnerable place where you're thinking about exploring your sexuality, and then you have somebody take advantage of you in this way. And that's absolutely awful. Nothing like that should ever happen to a young person when they're in such a vulnerable and fragile place in the first place. You know, when it's like when women first start their period and you hear about girls that don't know why they're bleeding or what sanitary products they should use or how they should use them or where they should purchase them from. Like, that to me is absolutely wild. Why are there no support structures in place? Like, you should not be taken advantage of when you're at the brink of exploring who you are, what you believe in, what you feel comfortable with, and then for you to kind of start to think about those thoughts and feelings, and then to be in a position where you are taken advantage of and you are vulnerable and you are exploited is
Yeah, it was weird. It was my
awful.
freshman year and she was a senior, and I'm like, because going into my freshman year, I knew I was definitely like a little bit gay, and like it was just a bunch of girls and we were talking, and I mentioned something and she thought that as an opportunity to do whatever she wanted to do. So it was, yeah, it was weird. It was because like, you know, we're all teenagers in this space together, so it's like, because I could, in the high school year with like other high school people, so it's like I could be a freshman with seniors, so it's like, and when the dorm parents go to sleep and we're all up, you know, it's free for all.
If that would have been an interaction with a male, there may have been an opportunity for you to say, you know, this happened to me and I wasn't comfortable with it. But the altercation, of course, of you being involved with another female has a whole other host of issues that would have, and questions that would have come along with
I
that.
feel like we would have just gotten in trouble. Like no one would believe that I was like a victim. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and you know, later on you have this moment where your friend speaks up for herself and says, you know, like, I've been involved in this altercation with this older man that I did not ask for, that I did not want brought onto me, and then she's been blamed for that abuse that's been inflicted on her. So of course you're not in a position to speak openly and to willingly offer that information to people in the hopes that the person that did this to you might be disciplined. So you're kind of just left on your own with no one to speak to about this, to kind of try and work out why it's happened, how it's happened, and what it means.
Exactly. Everything, yeah, it was like secret, hush hush, under the rug. Don't do that. Like, what do you mean I didn't do anything?
And then, you know, a year to 2 years later, you have this experience with a man who makes you realize that you probably definitely aren't heterosexual. You have this pent up feeling of guilt, so you speak to your dorm parents about the experience. What's their reaction to you when that happens?
So at the time I was actually really close with my dorm mom, and I you know, I cried and she like prayed for me and sent me to bed. I guess I don't know, she hugged me. I just didn't really want to talk about it, but I felt so guilty. I felt like I had to, even though it happened when I wasn't even on campus. Like, you know, it's just that impending guilt. They really work it into you.
And are there any consequences given to you because of this interaction?
No, I don't think so. I don't remember. I don't think so.
But you do realize at some point that there is a ramp up in terms of you being paddled and wearing a scarlet letter t-shirt and receiving some more of the discipline that was set aside for other types of rule breaking.
Yeah, I feel like because at the time when I told her I was still kind of being favored, it was just like, oh, you're guilty, pray for forgiveness, you're fine. You know what I mean?
Eventually there's this experience where your friend has this altercation with this older man, and she's told it's her own fault, and you kind of have a snapping moment where you realize that something is wrong at the core of the program or the teachings, and you decide to collect other people's experiences. And how long are you there for after you start this process before you leave, and what effect does this have in terms of you and other people when you start to collect these stories?
It was definitely either my junior or senior year. I started asking around, and when I graduated I left and ended up going to college. But I don't know. I didn't really, like, when I graduated, and like a few years ago when I did the Facebook post, like one of the principal's daughter like reached out to me. She's like, we allow Harry Potter books now, and like she's like, we have a therapist on staff. I'm like, one therapist for all of these kids. Like, you're not doing anything. Like, nothing's being done. Like, I don't want to hear your sorry comfort excuses. You know what I mean? Like, so that was like them saying like they're doing something, but I just don't think it's enough.
What I found really interesting about some of our communication was that a couple of days ago, you expressed that you were quite nervous about coming to share your story because you felt like, and this is a quote from you as well, you felt like your story was not as bad as other people's, which I feel is almost a remnant of what you experienced during this program. It almost feels like a product of what you went through to downplay your experiences and to almost live in a state where you don't complain about things or talk out about things or speak out about things because somebody somewhere has it worse than you, and you're kind of smiling and
He calls me a pushover all the time. He's like, you're such a pushover, Madison. Like, and I get it all the time. Like, people are like, you're such a doormat. I'm like, I'm strong, okay, guys. Like, but yeah, you're absolutely right, for sure.
And I mean, what is the cost for somebody to attend one of these programs? Is it do they charge, or is it on a work-based program that people stay?
It's so much. There's so many moving parts. So basically, like, they survive off a lot of like donations, and like it's kind of like income based. So I've had people reach out to me that are like, my grandmother is being abused by the school, like asking for more money constantly, and like forcing her to put them in her will, and like stuff like that. So like they really thrive off of like donations and stuff like that. My family was wealthy, so I think like all of my aunts and uncles like took part in paying like a part, you know what I mean?
When you say that there's so many different layers, in some of the other programs like Straightway that have been spoken about, some people make generous donations and that's kind of how they stay. Some people pay, some people go to the nearest city to work and bring their money back that way. Some people, they donate labor, or they in Synanon, people fixed cars and vehicles if they could work in the motor section of the community. Do you feel like this place worked in much the same way? You could make monetary donations, you could go out and work and tithe, or you could volunteer your kind of, if you were an accountant, you might file the tax returns for the church or something like that.
Definitely. Like, like I said, like the teachers, are dorm parents and they live on campus for free. Like everyone kind of provides something. Like the lady that worked in the bakery, like worked and lives in town. It's like a small town, but school at the same time. It's so confusing. Like I never used to talk about it. Like, this is like when I first moved to New Jersey, like I'm not going to be like, I was in a cult. So I just pretended I went to a normal high school like everyone else.
I definitely think that you should talk to people about being in a cult, because first of all, people find it really interesting, and secondly, I think it's important for you to talk about it without feeling embarrassed or feel like people don't want to hear you, because again, much like we've talked about previously, when you've downplayed things, it's because of the experiences that you've had. But actually, if you were to speak to people, I think they'd be a lot more open to receiving that information than maybe you realize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's surprising. Just like, because like I said, like this year I finally am like, okay, this is what happened to me. I can't pretend it didn't. So when people are like, oh, where are you from? Where'd you go to school? I finally am like, well, I went to an interesting place, you know, and people are a lot more accepting of it than I expected. So that's nice.
I've just typed in French Camp Academy into Google on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I am shocked because the first thing that comes up, it says French Camp Academy. Then you have the drop-down list on Google, and it says Mississippi, tuition, abuse. So French Camp Academy, abuse. And it's so rare that you see a movement that has cult-like methods of control have anything cult-like associated with it in the drop-down menu of the Google search.
Yeah, and
so
it's such a small place.
From the work that you've done online, you really must have made a difference with for that to pop up the way that it has.
Yeah, I remember the dean, because me and my friend, she's a lawyer, we were talking back and forth, and another friend was kind of involved in like us all kind of getting together, and the dean like threatened one of us, like she said, like, or I think it was one of the guys, he said like, dude, the dean just called me and threatened me and said like he's gonna get the FBI on us if we keep doing this, if we keep spreading this Facebook post. And like, so we kind of like backed off, but I think it was just an empty threat, to be honest.
And it's funny because at the bottom of when you click search on French Camp Academy abuse, the article at the bottom of the first page says for LGBTQ people, Christian schools can be traumatizing.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's so telling from what we've said, from what we've spoken about here.
And they had like a separate school that was even more isolated called Onesimus, and that's like where like you went if you were really bad. And they I think a lot of like the gay guys had to go there for sure.
Oh, this article here written by Tris Mamone says that it's about Morgan Stringer. This is about Morgan Stringer and her experiences in the LGBTQIA community. And so this whole article is about your friend.
That's crazy.
She must have. There are quotes directly from her in this article, so she must have spoken to this person in order to write this article.
Definitely.
Wow. This is religiousdispatches.org. Wow, I will post the link to that in the episode description because that looks really interesting. And then at the top of that, there is an article that is, it says the impact of French Camp Academy on child abuse and neglect. And it is actually a thesis. So somebody has written an educational piece on the abuse that is inflicted on children involved in that program. So that's interesting.
Okay. That validates me because I was like, it's not that bad.
No, and I don't know why you didn't need validating in the first place. That's what's interesting about our conversation. And then when you type in French Camp Academy without abuse on the end, there's only 3 links on the first page of Google, and that is a link to the actual website itself, frenchcamp.org, the Wikipedia page, and the Facebook page.
They just got into social media. Like, I think the kids are just now allowed like to be on the computers for like a certain amount of like the leisure time, whatever.
So how, when, and why did you finally leave French Camp Academy in Mississippi?
Well, I graduated. They really do encourage like students to like come back, you know, and like I was gonna work at the summer camp, and like I was, but after everything, you know, I decided I'm gonna just go to college and get out and like never look back. And I don't think I ever went back. I just said goodbye.
And what did that look like for you? Did you go on to further education? Did you move in with friends or family? And how was your transition and reintegration into everyday life?
It was super difficult because I didn't know how to use a laptop, and my aunt and uncle sent me one for like college, and when I graduated, I went to live in the dorms in school. And then shortly after my first year, I got my own place. But I just felt like I didn't have like everyday like social skills. I just felt awkward and weird, but I went out. It was college and I was free and not being monitored, so I was a little wild, but it was a good time. Nothing crazy, but definitely experiencing the world and being on my own, it was overwhelming for sure. And when I was like 21, my aunt offered me to come stay with them in New Jersey for a few weeks, and then I started getting into the world of bartending, and here I am.
And your work around highlighting some of the key issues within this program continues today, because you talked about putting the Facebook post live and it going viral and you having a pretty extensive response to that.
Yeah, I do want to do something. I write, so I'm either write a book. I have it, there, but it's just, like I said, I always feel like it's not good enough or like not important enough, so I kind of like put it off, but I still work on my stuff. I love writing anyways, so I can't not do it.
No, you should definitely write something. We would love to see that. We would love it, especially because we do the memoir giveaway each month on the show. So the more memoirs that we have to highlight and promote and give away on the show, and it's coming across as quite telling that you are reserved in the answers that you give us, and you don't want to speak too negatively about the people that you met during your experiences at French Camp Academy, and the way that you often have imposter syndrome and things that stop you from maybe striving for things that are not too far out of your reach. You talked about being an avid reader, and Quentin Tarantino, he said that he didn't go to film school, he went to films. So if you want to write a book and you've read enough books, I think you can probably write a book if you go by that philosophy that he claims to have. So we would absolutely love that. I feel like your voice on paper may be even more profound than it has been here today and has been online in terms of, and collecting people's stories. I think it could be even more powerful than those things. I hope that is something you decide to pursue.
Yeah, it's in my documents. It's not done.
It's hard to write. It's one of those things that I spoke to an author called Zach Bonney on here recently, who wrote Dead, Insane or in Jail about his Cedar experience. And he said that it's one thing to say, I'm writing a book, but it's a whole other thing to sit down and write a book, because it's like mental and psychological torture, because you have to sit there and you have to be so disciplined and you can't procrastinate, and you have to dedicate yourself to actually writing this book, which is so much harder than going online and saying, I'm going to write a book. And everyone's like, yeah, do it, go for it. And you're like, oh, okay, well, everyone's already celebrated me, so what's the point in doing it now? Exactly. But if you were to go on and write a book, it would not be just to honor yourself and your experiences, but it would also be to honor other people's experiences, like your friend that you spoke about that was kissed against her will by the older man, and then had that blamed on her and the way that she dressed and the way that she brought that on herself, which is definitely not accurate anyway whatsoever.
Yeah, it's a lot. I've been focusing more on my poetry, so we'll get back to the French camp stuff, but I really want to get that out there for sure.
Well, I've just read a book of prose. I've read a book of I've just read a book of poetry called How to See a Man About a Dog by Samuel Knox, and that was incredible. It was just like lots of short pieces, about his life. So you could even do it in poetry form. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I have like hundreds. So I want to like piece them together and get the creepiest and the weirdest ones and into something like really interesting. And
yes, do it. And send anything you have, you should send to us so that we can read it and we can celebrate it. But my last question to you before we finish today is to ask you what advice you have for anybody else that is or has come out of one of these programs and suffered some type of difficulty in readjusting to everyday life, has waited a few years before speaking out and acting on some of the things that happened that were difficult for them. What advice do you have for people that have had similar experiences to you?
I wish someone had advice for me. I don't know. Find as many support groups as you can, I guess. And like I always feel like alone, but like there's someone out there that can relate to you. So find them. This thing that happened to you it's a part of you, but it doesn't have to define you. I guess that's it.
Do you feel like you didn't realize the scope of the impact that this program had on other people until you started asking those questions? Because you say go and find somebody else that thinks and feels the same way as you, but it's hard to know where to find those people.
It definitely is. Yeah, I guess you kind of just have to talk about it, and maybe someone was like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like one girl I work with, she kind of went through a similar thing, but not completely similar. But it was just nice to be like, oh, okay, you can relate a little bit. But, it is definitely hard to like find that support when you don't know where to look. Like I just went online and did whatever I could, I guess. Yeah.
So go and find somebody that you can relate to, somebody that's had similar experiences. You can do that by contacting peers and other people that went through the program with you. You can do that by going onto public forums like r/troubled teens on the subreddit and finding other people who have been through not necessarily the exact program that you, but a similar one, because they have all adopted principles from Synanon into their own program and have changed and adapted and grown and renamed and continued the same practices as those ones that we've discussed on the show. But essentially, your advice is to use those spaces on the internet or get in touch with those people that you have had these experiences with and discuss them at length and find people that you can interact with that can understand those experiences on a level that somebody like me who didn't go through them might not be able to.
Yeah, I guess because it's always good to have people to relate to. I think it's important, and just kind of like read books and move on. It's not forever,
Well, all that I have left to say is thank you so much for coming here and telling us your story today. I know some of parts of it have been difficult for you to speak about and relive today. And I do appreciate you coming here and giving us your opinion and reflecting on those experiences and talking through them and allowing other people to see another layer of how some of these programs work. It's a link between the troubled teen industry coverage and the straightway coverage that we've done in terms of the community that is offered to families to come and live on the commune in a religious setting You've spoken about how not everybody there was out to harm people. However, such is the environment that there are people there that have harmed people. And I think that's important to highlight. So thank you so much, Madison, for coming and sharing your story with us. I really hope that you pursue your creativity and the plans that you have for your writing, for your poems. I really hope that you are able to be open about your experiences, to tell people, I was in a high demand control group, I was manipulated and coerced in these ways, because it helps to build people's awareness around these situations and helps to arm people with the tools that they may need to recognize when the same thing could be happening to them. And I think that's so important. And the main aim of this podcast, if not to allow people to have the cathartic tool of speaking about their experiences and letting it be known to the wider public. So thank you for joining us, for sharing your story with us, and I really hope that you continue on your journey of recovery.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess maybe I should change it to your experience is valid to any advice, because that's the one I need. But thank you so much. Have a good night.
I definitely think that going forward, we need to have sort of like a hashtag movement that like hashtag Madison, your experiences count.
Exactly.
Your experiences matter, and your experiences are relevant, and all of the things that come with all of that we could explore. But absolutely, You're right when you say that they are valid and they need to be taken seriously. And I hope that you can adopt that and take some of that from our conversation today, and really think about it, because I do genuinely and sincerely mean it when I say that I think you should take that more seriously, especially because there will be others that listen that have had similar experiences who probably need to think and feel the same way.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone needs a little support.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Madison. I really hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Take care. Bye. That is the end of this week's bonus episode. If you'd like to get in touch, you can do so by emailing me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram @cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker, Casey, and this has been the Cult Vault.